Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, Lubbock's gotten some rain. It's been nice. Obviously, Lubbock always needs some rain. It's been good. Shout out to the farmers. Hopefully they got just enough, but not too much. You know how delicate of a balance that is. You know, I said a little like, well, I did kind of a rain dance for y'all, but then it occurred to me, maybe a little too much. So how disturbing is the image of me doing a rain dance, though, Mighty Joe?
Oh boy. I don't know if I want to see that or not. You know, I mean, you got the peace pipe working and the headdress, or just no.
No, the headdress. Maybe it was after a couple cervezas last weekend. My family likes thunderstorms, so we were pretty excited about that. But man, right now, beautiful weather on campus. This is about as nice as it gets, and people using umbrellas for shade from the sun. So it really feels like summer's coming on. And want to take opportunity to answer some of y'all's questions on the board, and we have some good ones, Mighty Joe. Let's start with one from Red Raider KA, who wants to know what's the difference between the current staff and the old staff as far as offering prospects and talent evaluation. What do you think, Joe, as far as on the recruiting trail from the coaching staff?
You know, it's really just I don't want to cop out or anything, but it's at this point I'm not seeing massive differences in terms. I mean, I think what Kingsbury and those guys started out doing, which didn't work, was you know, they had the whole cool thing going on,
Yeah.
Coach Cool, and they tried to strike while the iron was hot, and they went after the really big guns out there and struck out on a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Then sort of came back down to earth and started being a little bit more realistic in their offers.
Yeah.
And I think basically Wells and those guys, they're kind of starting out the same way. I mean, they don't have any illusions about, you know, how much SWAT they have right now among the players and the high school coaches out there and everything. So I think they're setting their sights relatively low. But I mean, that sounds bad, but I don't mean it that way. I mean, you can find some excellent players who are not five-star guys, right? So a lot of these guys that they're offering, you may go, well, I don't know, and they turn out to be excellent players. So, but the point is, I think they're just trying to be kind of modest and realistic right now, build a foundation and a base of players who can come in and contribute to you, and then eventually start winning some games, and then you start setting your sights a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's good stuff, Joe. I think for me, the biggest differences would be, they have much more of a social media presence, especially Matt Wells. I mean, he's tweeting like several times every day. I mean, he even tweets out every commit, from music shows to every sport event that he goes and you know, like Texas Tech softball. He'll say thank you to them. I mean, Kingsbury would tweet like twice a year, you know, and it'd be from like a Mayweather fight or something, you know, or the Derby. I'm just being honest. So it's a huge difference, and it's important this day and age. Another big difference, and this is maybe the biggest one, is on defense. They're not waiting to evaluate them in person. They're getting on these defensive prospects much quicker than they did, because David Gibbs had a process which he believed in, which required basically that you see the guy play or at least work out in person before you actually offer him a scholarship. You know, they only landed, I think, like 10 or 11 commits in the last two classes. So on one hand, it wasn't very successful. They did have a high rate of, I want to say at least somewhat successful hit rate. Not a lot of like necessarily ballers, but some good football players. So, I mean, I guess you could argue, we'll see how it plays out. But I think those are the two biggest differences for me. I'd say that, and Tech's offering more players overall, more recruits than they did, which I think is common for a new staff. All right, Panther Cat wants to know, with the athletes Chris Beard has now, do we expect more of a press defense and perhaps more fast breaks on offense? Do you think maybe a more up-tempo style? Joe, what do you think?
Well, you know, two separate questions there. Now, on the pressure, you know, the answer is I don't think so. Because look,
I want to quantify this pressure, because I mean they apply pretty.
Full court.
Yeah, full court is what I'm assuming here that he's asking.
Right, but as far as full court stuff, no, I'm not expecting it. I mean, I think the reason for that is this. When your defense, your half-court defense, is as good as Texas Tech's is, why switch anything up? Why? You're not giving up easy baskets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why run a lot of risk of putting pressure on people with somebody busting the press and getting a layup or a dunk? You know, so I just don't think there's any real motivation to make any schematic changes on your defense. He's not going to become, Chris isn't going to become Bob Huggins overnight in a lot of different ways. So no, to put it bluntly, no, I don't see a lot of full court pressure. And on the other side of things, as far as running a little bit more fast break, I think that's possible. And I think, one of the reasons is because Terrence Shannon, as a guy.
And Ramsey.
You got some guys who really can get out in the open court and very fluid, mobile guys, fast, get down the court. And another thing to think about, when you've got as many deadly spot-up shooters as Texas has down there, if you can just kind of beat that defense back before it gets organized and spread some guys around the perimeter, kick it back out, and you got Morrow and Khalid Thomas and Kyler Edwards and Savrasov perhaps, and who knows, just peppering away from out there. That's potentially a pretty good strategy. So I mean, I think in that regard you could see some a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I think they'll be selective. They're not just going to take the ball out of the net because one thing, they don't allow teams to score a lot and just get up and down the court. But I think they'll run a little bit more than they have, especially 2 years ago, but maybe a little bit more than last year because they, like I said, they have the horses. Even the big guys they've added, Holyfield and Thomas, they both could run. They're really mobile big guys. So yeah, they're obviously going to be deeper than they have been. So I mean, they're going to have a lot of options. I think this team, I think one thing you can count on is tremendous half-court defense, and then from there, I think they're going to have a lot of options, Joe, which is awesome. Radio PD wants to know which Texas Tech coach wins the next national championship.
Good question. Listen, the national track championships are coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah.
And Kitley, as always, has a salty unit out there. So that could happen, I mean, you can't get any quicker than that. I mean, that's what we're talking about, 3 weeks, something like that. Yep. So, that's a possibility. But, I mean, crazy as it sounds, I mean, I think Tech is going to be one of the favorites, certainly in my mind, to win the national championship in basketball next year. All right. So if Kitley doesn't get it done, and I don't think this is Tadlock's year, I think they'll probably go back to the World Series, but I don't think they're going to win it all. Yeah. So if those two things don't happen, then hey, I think there's a real chance that Tech could just win the whole thing in basketball next year.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kitley. I think just because, like you said, it's the next thing up, and I think track, baseball, and basketball all have a legitimate opportunity to do so. I mean, heck, I don't know enough about college softball to really know, but they're pretty salty as well, as you like to say. I mean, so they may be in the mix as well. But I'm going to go with Kitley. I think that would be the smartest as far as Vegas odds, the best chance for one, just because, like Joe said, it's coming up. Right. So. All right, we have another basketball question. This comes from Mr. Mustafa-Mon, who wants to know which freshman of Dre Savrasov, Russell Tachua, Clarence Nadolny, Terrence Shannon, or Kevin McCullough will have the biggest impact next year. What do you think?
Some of those names are jawbreakers, huh? I mean, those freshmen, huh?
For me.
I'm going with my boy Kevin McCullough. And part of the reason is because he's been here, he's been in the system, he's got a leg up on these guys, everybody except for Savrasov, who's been around quite a bit too. But and not only that, I really like McCullough's game. I think everybody is going to be very, very impressed with his intensity. This is a guy he's all about business when he gets on there on the court, and he's mature. Doesn't seem like a raw, wet behind the ears freshman or anything like that. I can see him coming in there and making an immediate impact and at a position somewhat of need, if we may speak of point guard. This is a 6'6" guy with serious point guard ability, so he can slot in there and give you some minutes at that position. And that size at 6'6" is really, really nice to have on the perimeter. So yeah, that's my choice there.
Yeah, McCullough would have been my pick too, so I'll choose someone else. I like what Matt Mooney said about McCullough recently. We had him on the Rockin' Pregame radio show, and he said basically that McCullough pushed him in a one-on-one game, and he's going to be a real baller. So I like him. I'm going to go with Nadolny. Look, he played a year of prep ball. I talked with his coach there at the Scotland campus up there in Pennsylvania, who look, on his resume, he's coached 18 guys who have played in the NBA, all right? So he knows talent. He's known Chris Beard since the 90s. So this isn't a guy who's just going to be hyperbolic and just, bragging about his guy needlessly. He says Nadolny could be in the pros sooner rather than later, that he's a legitimate guy, that he's not sure if he's seen anyone improve as much as he has over the course of a season like that. And then by the time he was done, he had a year of prep ball under his belt. So Nadolny has a Euro skill type from playing in France, and that's significant. He has some time playing in New York on the East Coast, so to get toughened up a little bit. And then he played a year of prep ball, which really helps guys coming in to play college ball, in my opinion. That extra year just can be huge in some cases. So I think he has a really good shot of like forcing Beard to play him. Even if they're, on paper it looks like, where are they going to find all these minutes? Beard may have no problem. He's going to play whoever gives him the best chance to win. I think Clarence Nadolny may be one of those guys. But Mighty Joe, man, great stuff from you as always. Thank y'all for watching, and until next time.